It's my pleasure to invite you to today's conversation with We Are From Here, a group of artists and collaborators who were featured at Colomboscope 2022, an interdisciplinary art festival based in Colombo, Sri Lanka. We have Firi Rahman and Lojithan Ramanathan, who are part of the We Are From Here project initiated from Slave Island in 2018. The project was initiated when several of the neighborhood's iconic sites were razed to the ground or collapsed due to neglect. Firi, Lojithan, and Manesh, alongside various collaborators, have been mapping people's stories and oral histories from this neighborhood. Project Ashray was seen at Colomboscope 2022, displayed souvenirs, pictures, albums, and articles that narrate histories of dispossession and displacement alongside philosophies of pluralistic living and forgotten stories of places that no longer exist. There were many layers to Ashray. It built on both visual and oral testimonies, forming a somewhat collective memory. Since we don't have the luxury of being in that space today, can you share a little bit about the different aspects of the installation?
So Ashray installation is a process of creating an archive that combines the personal and collective stories of those in the community. The objects we collected for it were photographs, personal stories, and testimonies. We put together documents like that and built a complete installation with the format of document files, and a photo display with with some of the objects we found in the places where people were displayed. Our files contain maps of landscapes that are subject to change due to the continuous displacement, as well as some documents related to the stories, photos found in the private collections, and some of the detailed artworks we have drawn for their stories, as well as architectural drawings. And even before we began the We Are From Here project, we were documented the changes that were taking place on Slave Island, and those photographs took place in the Ashray installation. Stories collected through oral conversations we recorded with the concern of those who made the conversation with us, and we came up with a cool idea to exhibit those recordings with Ashray installation. We turned an antique telephone into a listening device to create something that could make sense of way audience came and listened to these recorded stories. And yeah, and the telephone idea was a great idea and the highlight of the installation.
I remember going to the installation and kind of picking up the phone and hearing these really mundane, but also really sometimes intimate conversations between people, or just recordings of conversations, and that was really special because it brought these stories to life. I think my next question would then be what prompted you towards this personal archive, this intimate space, and most importantly, preserving this personal archive?
So I would love to give answer for that because this is when we started this project in way back in 2014 and 15. It was a very simple idea. Like it came from my grandmas to my grandpa and my dad, where they started to kind of collect all this like their personal stuffs. It could be just photographs to and even like paper cuttings and receipts and all these things they've been collecting over the years. And so the idea became like, why like we always kind of seeing like slave island is being portrayed by outsiders in a different media and stuff like that. And we were kind of keen to know what locals know about themselves and what the root about their own roots, and if they really want to talk about it. So, and if my grandma could just collect all these documents and stuff over the years, and we were just kind of keen to know like what locals know about themselves and are they like collecting all these things. So that's what it kind of provoked us to kind of think into that. So in the initial stage, we started to kind of document photographs, and it's our own personal, like, our collections, like photograph from the displacement and the objects that we found on the road and stuff like that in the rubbers and stuff. But then later in 2018, the idea just became so solid that we want to kind of collect and like preserve this, make a platform where everything is just available for the future. So, and because things are changing over the years like so fast, and we thought of like it could be some place where anyone could just access these documents to learn about Slave Island.
What you said about having these as, for locals to learn about themselves as well, because there's a lot of official documentation around displacement sometimes and around changing landscapes, especially with regards to urbanization, but there's not much that we hear from those being displaced. I think there was a cassette that said from Sita, if I'm not mistaken. Just all of those little details that kind of left behind, and the stories that a lot of people wouldn't have paid attention to being given or being displaced in this place was really refreshing to see.
Yeah, I think those are the collection that we most of them people donated, and also we kind of like looking at whenever we go to these sites and in the rubbles, and we always kind of curious what sort of things people left behind. Like it could be their personal collection. The cassette, it's a love letter, so it's just a audio, like it's a long 1 hour long, like a voice note on a cassettes. So these are the things people sort of like leave behind in the rubble. So, and we are not too sure like where these objects are coming from. So we just, the idea is to kind of document and like to collect these things, and with the actual geolocations. So the idea is to think about what could be in this place in future. What sort of city is going to be beneath these new cities. So that's the idea behind those objects too.
Which leads me on to my final question for you all. I think when you all began archiving this project, you initiated an open studio, from what I know, where neighbors and people who lived in the city and across Slave Island were welcome to come share their own personal histories, and you all would sit and memory trace from these little details and things that you all can find. Can you share a little bit about that process?
Yes. So when we started the project, so as I said earlier, we did like our own documentation, like we started taking photographs and all. So when we started to collect these stories from the locals, and we kind of like with help of Manas, of course, we try to kind of like make this sort of like open studio setup at my place. So where we invited these locals to come and like share like what they know about it. So it was a very different experience, because usually when we go to a person individually, so it's like they kind of share their own personal memories and sort of thing. But in that setup where we have like 10 people coming together, so it became like a really kind of interactive, and they sort of like started to share like different stories, and that adds the layers to our project. So we usually during that process we pull out these maps of Slave Island, and we try to kind of place them on that and see like what sort of memories they remember in these locations. So they go through this psychogeographic map and point things they remember from each lane. So it's like it's a memory map, and they kind of point out certain trees they remember, or maybe it's where they worked. And these are the things we started to work on, that sort of like Ashray setting. So Ashray is also like very sort of like in Slave Island, it's a slang where we call it for people come together and sort of like a share and hang out. So that's where the name is also from there. And also then we started to kind of do this kind of exercise, and also then the layers of the story started to add up into the thing. And then also sometimes we go to these locations and and try to find these objects and see the location tag. We always get the location tag of this each objects and the photographs, and to kind of to see like where this coming from, and because we are not too sure, like at the beginning when we start the project, we didn't really think about the visual outcome of this project. It was like a very much like we try to collect everything as possible, like from videographs to photographs to audios and ambient sounds to like there are so many the kind of layers and materials that we collected. For the Colomboscope, it's a kind of like a great chance for us to kind of to see how we can put these materials and resources in a visual format. So coming from like artist background, we both are like we are kind of like thinking about how this archival stuff could tell a story rather than just like putting it as a museum setup. How we can like let audience to sort of interact with these subjects, we interact with the objects and go through that and pick up the phone and listen to the conversation and Google this location on the photographs, and also go through the files and try to find these coordination numbers and see like how the story connects. So these are the things that we kind of experiment during this Colomboscope. So and then now we are also thinking like what we could do like better, like, you know, how we can change this project. So I think for Colomboscope, it was like one way of a visual form that we created, but I feel like in the future, it could change into something else, because it could turn into a digital platform. It could be a website. It could be something that is accessible. It's like, it could be mobile studio. And we are just kind of like looking into like different ways, because that is also going to be like impacted by these changes that is happening in slave island, because we also in a state where we are also in urgency to kind of to collect and preserve these things. And so the visual part is going to be the final stage of the project. So it could take time, and I feel like we would definitely like will bring more exciting interactive stuff for the locals to learn about their own roots. Yeah.